Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Information Creep, issue number 5, and we finally get to look at the meat and potatoes. Unfortunately, we're not joined by Greg, but we do wish him well. But tonight we do have myself, I'm Dakota, and Spiros and Walter. If you guys want to shout anything out, by all means.
Hey, hey,
What's up? I'm out here in a nice place out here in Illinois, Winona, Illinois, where I'm chilling with a friend of mine, Gerald Prophet, and his wife. Helped me get away, so it's a getaway for me.
Winona, Illinois.
That's right.
Sounds like there's nothing but pastures and fields
Yep.
and blue
You got
skies,
it.
probably.
That's right.
Yeah.
You called it.
It just has that like old timey feel to the name. But anyways, we're going to be taking a look at the events that happened after the death of Optimus Prime. On the more than meets the eye side, I'm kind of like loathing doing the RID side of things, to tell you guys the truth. But we'll be looking at more than meets the eye. We'll be kind of taking a glance at issues number 1 through 22 tonight. That's right before the Dark Cybertron event, so should be a lot of fun. And the way it starts out, I think it's hilarious, because in my mind, like we talked about this last week, me and Walter did, like I like to imagine sounds kind of in the whole like background of everything that I'm reading. You know what I mean? I like to paint this elaborate picture when I'm reading comics. But I imagine, it's Hot Rod there. He's like on, or Rodimus there. He's on a stage giving this big speech, and I can just imagine like the most 80s butt rock playing behind him. About how on this very spot, this many millions of years ago, this guy did this and this guy did that, and then Optimus Prime said no to Megatron, and then we're gonna launch from here and go find the Knights of Cybertron because no one wants us on the planet anymore. I don't know. That's just something I wanted to kind of point out there. Bumblebee's still kind of coming to terms with it. Because Ratchet decided he wanted to leave with them, and he didn't like that. Prowl wasn't happy because Chrome Dome decided to leave, and who knew they were so close before reading this, right?
right.
Let's be honest. Prowl's head was getting screwed up after what happened there to him, and what can I say about Bumblebee? He was just learning how to become a leader.
Yeah, well, I mean, I still think he was kind of struck, because he did have some like leadership stuff going on during the Chaos event, but yeah, you're right. Like he was never, Prime kind of threw him, just full force out there to the wolves. But yeah, so, and just speaking, solely on issue number 1, I liked whenever, everyone was like getting on the ship. Which Prowl was telling Wheeljack, I think, that he compiled a list of those who would stay and those who would go, and tomorrow, the big day was going to be one big non-event, and then it turned out to be quite the event, because like they had Red Alert on the door because he was the like chief security guard or whatever, and you've got Brainstorm walking up with his infamous briefcase that we see forever, and he's just like he's like, okay, let me search the briefcase. You're kind of the most infamous weapons engineer in the galaxy. And Brainstorm was like, well, no, you can't, because I'm exempt. And Red Alert was like, Jesus, man, like why is everyone exempt? But then you had Swerve, who you didn't know it was Swerve, but asked for a name, and he said, you can call me or Megatron, or you can call me Death, or something like that. And then he started going on about the quest. I thought that was pretty funny. And then I'm trying to remember what all happened in detail. Like a lot of this is just kind of minor, and I do want to get on to the rest. But Cyclonus and Whirl, they get into a little tussle, and it drags its way towards the boarding party of the Lost Light, and in which case Rung gets his arm taken off, which was all well and good fun. Then they finally do they? I can't remember. Do they crash land, and then you see Tailgate sitting in a cave 6 million years ago, like slowly making his way to his energon rations to blow up, and he ends up blowing them up. I think that's what happens, and then he passes out. I don't know. The point is, Tailgate's super old, and then Rewind and Chrome Dome kind of stumble upon him. Who else was walking with them? Do you guys remember?
Was it Whirl and Cyclonus land, and Ratchet is trying to talk Whirl down, and then Tailgate blows his energon rations, and the explosion subsequently takes off the front of Whirl's chest, and I don't know if it's like part of his head, but that's how they actually discover Tailgate. And I want to say it was Rewind, Chrome Dome, and Ratchet, because that's how Ratchet ended up being there.
Yeah, I think Ratchet was the third, and that's also how Cyclonus lost his horn, I believe. Was because he had both horns at the beginning of that. So, and that's something I wasn't like. I'd always thought Cyclonus lost it during the Chaos event until I was rereading it not too long ago, and I was like, oh, I'll be damned, he had both horns. So, kind of funny how that was, like Tailgate's fault at first. That he lost the horn, because later on Tailgate ends up replacing it, which whether or not that's relevant right now probably doesn't matter. But so yeah, they all board the Lost Light. They got Whirl there, and Ultra Magnus is talking to Rodimus about, man, I don't know why you didn't put me on the door. And Rodimus is like, well, you probably would have turned everyone away. He was like, well, for good reason. And Magnus just starts like going through all these, like, I don't like him. He's highly volatile. He's super dangerous. This guy owes me money. Like all this other stuff. And Rodimus was like, man, you really need to relax. Like, you get uptight whenever someone's got their badge on at an angle. And he goes into like Autobot code about, the badge has to be perfectly squared and all that. So anyways, they board everyone up. They get everyone on the Lost Light. Tailgate had talked something about, did I miss the launch? Before he passed out. And so they just assumed that he was, wanting to be part of the Lost Light. So, that's why they took him. And I think, anyway, Rodimus was ready to take off. Whenever Rodimus wants to do something, he does it. So they take off, and you see Prowl and Bumblebee kind of talking, and Bumblebee was like, Prowl, I thought you had a plan. And as the ship's taking off, you see a big kaboom. And so now everyone on Cybertron thinks everyone on the Lost Light is dead. So hooray for that. But we find out they're not dead, that instead they had jumped halfway across the galaxy, and their quantum engines had exploded because Ore? Was it Shock or was it Ore? I think they even kind of made mention of that. I think it was
Ore is the one. Ore is the one who gets trapped in the engines because he was standing too close to them.
Right. Which, quick quantum travel lesson for you guys. That's not what you want to do whenever you're about to quantum jump, since everyone's doing that now.
Well, it was also a tie-in to some of the Generation figure books that came on out, like Hoist, or it was what was it called? The Spotlights. Like Hoist was one of them. Hoist, Trailbreaker.
Yep.
I think, weren't Hoist and Trailbreaker the only Spotlight issues that dealt with all that?
I think
they were the only ones that tied into More Than Meets the Eye, I believe.
Yeah. Was there a Skid story or a Crosscut story? I can't remember.
Yeah, Skids, Crosscut. Yeah.
Well, all the Dark Cybertron covers with them were they were just tie-ins. They were just Dark Cybertron, with the exception of Skids. That was More Than Meets the Eye 22, which we'll discuss later.
Yeah.
But one thing from issue 1 before we get too far away from that, and I forget. I love when Ultra Magnus is talking to Drift and Rodimus, and you see the way he views the world,
Oh, yeah.
and it has the rundown on like Rodimus's personality, and then it has risk of future criminal activity, and Rodimus is variable, and then he's looking at Drift, who's an ex-Decepticon, and risk of future activity off the scale.
Yeah, that was hilarious. And you see that like a couple of more times. We see it more like in annual, which we'll cover, here shortly.
Yep.
But yeah, I love how they made Magnus like he keeps his kind of serious bravado, but they really made him like a laughable character. Like not laughable, but a funny character, I think. Like every time
They made him into a half cartoon and half comic because Magnus was serious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, he's still serious, but yeah.
I like how they make him the straight man in the comedic situations.
Yeah.
So,
bravado, bro.
Yeah. So after the jump, we get the mysterious message in Prowl's quarters.
Yeah, man, isn't that which is super like overshadowing? Like I don't think we know really the origin of that message until like what the mid 30 issues.
Yeah, it's not until quote unquote season 2 of More Than Meets the Eye after Dark Cybertron that we learn the origin.
Tell you what, if you'll give me like just a minute, I'll actually I got the book right here. I'll look it up, talk amongst yourselves. Unless you know it.
Yeah, I actually got it in front of me. And also, issue 1 is the first depiction of Prowl flipping a table in the IDW universe.
Really?
Yeah. He was trying to talk Chrome Dome into staying, and as he and Rewind leave, Prowl just flips the table and then radios a mysterious figure to load some cargo onto the Lost Light.
Oh yeah, which is very important as well.
So let's see. Okay, the message. It's broken up, so I'm not going to read the breaking up. I'll just read the message as it is. Hello, can anybody hear me? It's the Lost Light. This message is an experiment, a failed experiment, I think, because if it worked, I wouldn't have had to send it in the first place. I'm calling from the future, and wait a second, and I have a message for Rodimus. Abort the mission. Do not leave Cybertron. There are terrible things out here we're not prepared for. But if I've miscalculated and we've already left, please find a way to get this message to him now. It's a list of do's and don'ts. Actually, it's just a list of don'ts. Don't open the coffin. Don't let them take skids. Don't go to Delphi. And do not, I repeat, do not look in the basement. And for the sake of the Cybertronian race itself, please don't. And then the message cuts off. So very ominous foreshadowing for the series from that short message that we got.
That was definitely a very ominous kind of like that's the long game, dude. Because like I said, like, that was well into the future issues of, or like the kind of middle to ending point of season 2 of More Than Meets the Eye.
Yep.
Like really right before the finale, I believe.
Yeah, I think. Well, no, I'd say it's about the midpoint of season 2 because there was still a lot of stuff that happened after that. That message's source was revealed.
Yeah.
But
something else while we're kind of on that last page, whenever Rodimus and Magnus, because we find out like the ship didn't blow up, like the hull was breached and they landed on a mysterious planet.
It was sabotage.
Well, they're standing outside, and Rodimus is like, "Look at the meteor shower," or basically, and Magnus is like, "That's not a meteor shower. Those are our friends burning up in the atmosphere." And you see like small writing, and Rodimus is like rubbing the bridge of his nose. He's like, not a good start. And Magnus was like, sorry, what was that? And he was like, I said not a good start. So you could tell he was very frustrated by that whole ordeal, which, again, I thought was humorous. So there's that. But on that mystical planet, they're rounding up all their friends, and then they find Skids, who doesn't have any memory of who he is or what he's just done. No like recent memory. What did he think his name was again? It was something like
Slime
Slime
or Scum.
Or Scum.
Scum.
Yeah, Scum.
Sorry, I was channeling Mickey from Toy Detox when I said slime, because he always says that. He's like, I'm slime, dude, I'm slime. But yeah, he thinks his name is Scum, and he's got a message scribbled on the wall, or I guess carved on the wall behind him when we first see him, that says, "You haven't escaped. They're all around you." So,
and he completely misses it. And he's like, "What's this mode lock for?" Like, he's flying in this ship, and the ship is actually one of the things that he's running from, and which we will be able to get into later on as well, which is all fun. But he ends up disengaging the mode lock, and I think he sets it for a crash course. And by the time it transformed, it had already crashed and exploded. And then he finds out there's more of them chasing after him. And then Chrome Dome, he runs into Chrome Dome, and they start to talk, and Chrome, it's Skids, isn't it? And he's just like, Inhibitor Claw. And then Chrome Dome like says something else. He's like, Inhibitor Claw. And so Chrome Dome pulls it off, and then all these weapons come out of Skids, which a far cry from his G1 toy, honestly. Like, Skids, they made Skids look cool as shit, to tell you the truth.
They made him into a badass character, For once he was just the dreamer, he's no longer the dreamer. He tweets his character there some.
Yeah.
Yeah, before Skids ran into Chrome Dome, though, he's trying to get away from the big yellow robots, and he comes upon the corpse of Polaris, and I love that, without any regard for the well-being. I mean, granted, he's dead, but without any regard for the well-being, he throws Polaris at the yellow bot and then shoots him, hoping to explode, hoping to destroy the yellow bot, which they keep repeating 1984, which we don't know what it means at the present time, but we all thought it was just some tongue-in-cheek reference to the first year that Transformers showed up.
To be fair, I think it was totally both, but yeah, it's funny how they work that in. But yeah, he just blows up some dead body to kill another guy.
Yeah.
But he was man, Skids was all about adhering to the situation. You know what I mean? So, but they all end up making their way back to the Lost Light, and everyone except for, I think there were only two that died between Orr and Polaris.
Yeah, I think that, or there had to be more, because I think there's the panel where Skids finds Polaris's alt mode that you see another
one too,
or let's see. Yeah, because it looks like there's a couple, or at least one more body, but one thing to note in issue 2 is that they lay the groundwork for a lot of the next story arcs, because Rung is talking to Ratchet, getting his arm fixed, and Ratchet, the beginning of the running joke that nobody can remember Rung's name, where Ratchet calls him Ring, and Rung's talking about how Ratchet's or Rung's talking about how Ratchet's bedside manner and his finesse with working with his hands, And then Ratchet just reaches over and grabs a hammer and slams it into the palm of his hand. Because his hands are seizing up because he's so old.
Let's see, he's like, well, I must say how nice it is for someone to excuse me for a moment. And then, yeah.
Yeah, just slam. And then also the little rivalry between Drift and Ratchet. Where Drift says he wants the metabay brimming with positive energy. And or buzzing with positive energy, and Ratchet's like, idiot.
Drift is one of those characters where he sounds like he gets high or something, you know?
Drift is a very spiritually aware character after all of this, after all the Dark Cybertron stuff and all of that other stuff.
The Chaos stuff, you mean?
Yeah, my bad, the Chaos stuff. So, like, you know, he's like going through all this other stuff. Like, I think, you know, they say, like, you know, Drift is the one that writes all of Rodimus's speeches and, you know, got him on the whole Knights of Cybertron hype and all that. So
it's like he's a ghostwriter for Rodimus. He's a ghostwriter.
He's Rodimus's Pat Lee. Or Rodimus is his Pat Lee? I don't know. Damn, if only Greg was here. But yeah, and Ratchet's the complete obvious. He's your well, we're born and sometimes we die, sometimes we don't, but if we die, that's it. Kind of guy. So it's funny seeing them clash like that.
But Ratchet tells it like it is. That's the one thing.
Oh yeah, he's a realist.
I mean, if it's one thing, he'll tell it like it is. You know.
Something I want to point out, though, real quick, is the artwork for most of the characters in More Than Meets the Eye, because this is where we see, like, a big artist kind of overhaul. But, like, almost everyone has a face on their chest. Like, Rodimus has Iron Man on his chest.
Oh.
The Iron Man helmet.
And here's the funny part. Here's the weird part. They made him small when he's supposed to be, what size? So I'm trying to figure out when did they start making Rodimus small.
Well, it's not so much that Rodimus is small, it's that, like, Ultra Magnus is a very large character in the More Than Meets the Eye. Well, in the IDW verse itself.
In the IDW verse, yes, but, you know, even from, not trying to drill off course, but even from the cartoon, it's like, wait a minute, something's not right. But with Ultra Magnus, he's bulky, got that strength, power, you know, and weapons. So
yeah, but it's.
When you say small, Walter, do you mean like thin leaf kind of?
Yeah, because
you know, okay,
I just kept thinking,
more like a sprinter's build than like, you know,
right,
a quarterback build. Okay,
right. Because I kept thinking to myself, to the cartoon, like Rodimus and Ultra Magnus were like the same. I'm reading the comic; they got Rodimus small as hell. Not like that, but you get me what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, like, I mean, looking at the page from issue 1 where they're on the planet, Rodimus comes up to like the bottom of Ultra Magnus's shoulder pad. So I mean, he's not a short bot by any stretch of the imagination, but yeah, I definitely see what you're talking about, where they thinned him out. You know, like I said, and it's funny, and I'm going to go off on a tangent just because, you know, what the hell, why not? Let's pad out sometime. But a lot of people, in regards to Springer's appearance with his Generations toy, they're like, oh, it's perfect, it's spot on for IDW, and I've tried to explain it to people that, like, I feel that his Generations toy, like, you know, and I trigger everybody with the way I speak because I speak in extremes and analogies, but I'm like, you know, Springer looks a little anorexic compared to what I imagine him to be. Like, going off of the 1986 movie where he showed up, you know, he was a beefy dude in the 86 movie, and the way I explain it is he's like, he's not a linebacker, but he's like a quarterback. He's like a solid, stacked dude, but he's not overbearingly huge. Whereas the Generations toy is, a sprinter, or like, a wide receiver.
Mm-hmm.
To put it in like sports terminology. Hopefully we have some fans who are sports fans as well, so I'm not losing them. But so like people are like, oh, the Generations toy is perfect. I'm like, no, it's not Springer. Like Springer should be a bulky dude. So like,
And it was on that day that my friendship ended with Spiros. No, I'm kidding.
Oh, if our friendship hasn't ended the amount of stuff that I've said online, I don't know if...
Actually, you know who Springer... this is going to sound... Springer reminds me of... This is going to sound crazy, but...
St. Patrick's Easy.
He reminds me of Batman. He athletic. Intelligent.
Okay.
I'm just saying, man, that Generation Springer toy is perfect. That's the best Springer that will ever come out.
Uh-oh.
I love it. I just wish full gear.
Yeah, man, I agree with you. It's, I'm one of those ones that says it's perfect because I know that there's no way Hasbro would or could or... Well, I mean, they could, but I know there's no way they would have given us something, perfect to
right.
that Nick Roche design. But, man, it was so close, and it was close enough for me that, man, I love it. If a certain third party company that rhymes with Mastermind Relations were to make one, I'd be on board. Absolutely.
Unique Toys did one.
Yeah, but that was G1 style.
Yeah.
The code is more for the IDW look. But honestly, like the Fans Project Defender, and we might as well just call ourselves third party creep right now.
Yeah, really.
But the Fans Project Defender, like if it wasn't horribly handicapped by the amount of diecast in it, like it's kind of like what I imagine Springer to be. Like it's thicker, kind of more imposing body image. Like I think if Fans Project were still around, but a lot of people say they are, but we haven't
Let's
seen
be
anything.
honest. Yeah.
But like if they were just re-released Defender with the knowledge that they've gained over the past how many every year since it's been released, like almost 10 years now.
No, it hasn't been 10 years, has it?
No, I don't know. Or I don't know, like six.
Yeah, I think it's only been 6.
Let's conservatively estimate it at 6. If they could like work that engineering in, ditch the diecast, like, and just kind of keep that large deluxe size to where he's just maybe a head shorter than MMC Spartan, then that would be like ideal for any Generations collection of records in my mind. Because like that's another issue I have with Springers. The Generation Springers, I think he's just like a bit on the tall side for what I want my Springer to be.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
yeah, to a degree. You're yeah.
Opinions are like assholes. Everybody's gone.
Oh my goodness! Wow. No, I mean the thing with Springer is he reminds me of another character. Reminds me of Batman. Athletic, strong, intelligent, weapons at his disposal.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, I mean, he could take himself out of a situation.
Oh, except Springer's totally okay with killing. He's leader of the wreckers after all.
Yeah. But Springer's that big, bulky guy.
Yeah.
But like I was saying, like, I look up there around him, it's like, how the hell would y'all make him small? And you know damn well he's supposed to be,
I don't know, man. I actually, I'm on the other end of that. I like that Rodimus is kind of on that smaller end. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's just like my preference. He's still taller. He still has some kind of a larger size and bravado over the rest of those guys. So it's fine. It's not too terribly bad. But I don't know. I don't think he should be like as large, proportionately as Magnus. He's still kind of that young hothead. That's
the way how they did Magnus. They made him into a badass. It's like, oh, he's the strongest one there is, and it's like, okay. And plus, what they did with Magnus was his attitude, which was straight from the book. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And he didn't take crap from nobody.
I gotta find the figure.
So,
yeah. which was solid, but kind of leading us into this would be like issue number 3, which is the last part of the first story arc from More Than Meets the Eye. They've got everyone back. They've patched everything up. Orr is still fused into the quantum engines, which I guess they were okay with taking off with him being a part of that. But they find out because it starts out with Shock, kind of sitting there, apologizing to him, and all that, and like, man, I can't believe this is happening. Kind of paying his final respects. Then he picks up his phone and he deletes his last call, which is very, something else that's kind of overshadowing to future events, but it also gives the reader a sense of, okay, so he was the one that sabotaged the engines, because, it was a phone call from Prowl, but that wasn't necessarily what happened, but it really made you think, okay, or, was intentionally trying to sabotage the engines on Prowl's orders. But we find out later that wasn't the case, but, Shock was definitely covering Orr's tracks, which we'll find out a little bit more at the end of this particular issue of Information Creep. But Shock is then taken out by a mysterious figure, which we later come to find out is a Spark Eater, and it was super brutal because he sees this hand, or we see a hand, and he's grabbing his throat, and then out of nowhere his spark just comes out of his throat, and
Spark is gone, as in gone.
And then he blows up, basically, or he doesn't blow up. I think he kind of explodes from the chest cavity or whatever, and then that's whenever they're like, okay, Spark Eater's on board. Rodimus, this is where we find everyone, how they all get their roommates and all that. And he's like, all right, every one of you to a habitation suite, go in there, do this. So Tailgate at this point is stuck in mid-transformation because Swerve is too curious for his own good, and they're all making their way. I think Swerve is talking with Skids because he thought Skids was a total badass from the last issue. And so he's like, Swerve and Skids and Swerves, why don't you be my roommate? And they find, I guess, what looks like the biggest habitation suite on the ship, and it come to find out it's a bar. So Swerve is freaking out, and he's like, I always wanted a bar. I was going to open a bar with Blur. That's what we were going to do. Me and Blur are best friends. And then Skids is, climbing through he's, removing, roof panels, trying to climb through, the ventilation shaft and all that. He's like, hey, what are you doing? He's like, oh, man, I'm not just going to sit in here and wait for things to happen. All the while, Whirl has locked someone out of the room that he was supposed to have with them, which, it's a very Whirl thing to do, I guess. And meanwhile, Cyclonus is carrying Tailgate, who's transformed from the waist down, to their room, and Tailgate's like, oh, this is great. Doesn't this look great, Cyclonus? Oh, you got a big window to stare out of, and I got a little workstation over here, and he just drops in.
Want to know something?
What's up?
I'm going to say something right quick. You got to get IDW credit. They touched upon characters and made them into breakout stars.
Oh,
like
yeah.
Whirl, Swerve, and Tailgate, and even Cyclonus.
Yeah, which to be fair, I've always thought Cyclonus, had a bit of popularity to him, but characters like Tailgate and Swerve, even to a degree Trailbreaker and Hoist, honestly,
they made Trailbreaker into an alcoholic.
Yeah.
You got to give it where credit's due. They made him into an alcoholic. They made Rewind and Chrome Dome into lovers.
Yeah.
Psychotic lovers.
Yeah. They they did something. So it was all good.
Yeah, and I mean they did. They made these characters that, you know, otherwise didn't have a whole lot kind of going on for them character wise, into fan favorites for sure.
They turned these nobodies into something
Yeah.
that wasn't really, besides Cyclonus.
Yeah,
You know,
and
so-
Rodimus and Magnus. I mean, they had, you know, Roberts did have a couple of A-listers, but not you know, not near as many as, say, who was it, Barber that was writing RID? You know, he kind of had all the, you know, your old school favorites and stuff like that.
I think what they were trying to do was try to go a different approach to where, how many more people can we keep seeing the same character? We've seen it on TV. We've seen it in comics before. Let's give certain characters their breakout, their due. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Let's give these characters that never made it or weren't hardly in the cartoon, weren't hardly there in the comic book or something. Let's let them shine. And boy, they ever. And they did a good job, especially with World, with his attitude.
Yeah, making him crazy.
Yeah,
I've always kind of thought Whirl was like I've always kind of imagined him as a Deadpool type. You know what I mean? He's kind of batshit insane, but he's also like really good at killing. You know, X-Wrecker and all that. Which, you know, makes sense. But anyways, after that whole debacle, like Whirl hears the Spark Eater, you know, basically eating this other guy's spark. And then he kind of breaks out of the room in his helicopter mode, and he's shooting rockets at it, and at which point Trailbreaker uses his shield to block it. He's like, man, you know, if you do that, you're going to blow up half the ship. And Whirl's like, only response to it was, which half? Like, you know, like that's all that mattered to him. And then they were wondering like where he went, and they're like, well, he found the brightest spark on board. So he's heading down to, you know, whatever room, which happened to be Rung's room/office, which he ends up breaking the door down, and Rung is freaking out, and that's whenever we see Skids pop back up. He's like, "Hey, eyebrows up here," which was that's another joke kind of going on was Rung with his eyebrows. But eventually they escape. Rodimus devises a master plan to use Rung as bait, and he baits the Spark Eater to come for him, and they were going to fire up the quantum engines while Rodimus was tussling with him, and they ended up succeeding, and Rodimus lost his arms, but he got new arms built, which we see like the kind of exoskeletons of those arms, or the endoskeletons of those arms at the end, and he's all like happy because he's got new arms, which I thought was funny. And that concludes kind of the first little story arc. The next one is the whole Firebase Delphi thing, which
really quick. One thing to note: Animus, the robot, the Autobot that the Spark Eater ate in front of Whirl, has a green spark.
Oh,
and
center.
Yeah,
It's always
which is
interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting those little things that we see early on that get explained in later story arcs.
Yeah, that's right, because I don't think they had ever talked about 0.1 percenters at that point, did they?
No, we don't get that until I think issue 14 or 15.
Yeah.
You guys got me thinking. I got to go back and read this again. Holy shit!
Are you hungry?
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much.
I mean, I gotta start going back here reading because
Sit down.
I was in the storage there today, and I was just pulling out books. I'm like, and I had some of the books,
Here, why don't we
and therefore,
for now? And
And-
then eat dinner and then.
and therefore, man, as soon as you guys said that, I'm like, screw this. I gotta get these books again. Oh shit. And I missed that part what you said about the Spark Eater.
Dude, yeah, all of More Than Meets the Eye is just really, really solid reading.
It is. It's a sleeper book. You know what? And I've said this there before, and I'll say it again. I'm just shocked that it's not in Diamond's top 100, because that book is very hard to come by.
I thought it did get pretty high. I know it won some kind of something. I mean, I don't really keep up with top 100s or anything like that, but I thought it was a pretty popular thing, given what it was. You know, not your average like big time Marvel title or anything like that. But,
no, I mean, a book like that should be in the top 100 as in sales, as in units per month, because how well it's doing. And if I can't find those issues, then there's a real problem.
Yeah, but I mean, to be fair, they're also like 5 years old at this point too.
Yeah.
So
I mean, you talk about storytelling.
Yeah, man, I agree.
Hey, also of note, because I was muted and away from my phone when you guys were talking about the Spark Eater issue, in the little like flashback page where Cyclonus is talking to Tailgate, that is our first look at Voss from the DJG.
Oh shit!
Being held by Megatron.
Yeah, because was it he? Sorry, I'm kind of taking us off track. Yeah, because it says that Megatron assassinated somebody with a sniper rifle, and we come to find out later on that the sniper rifle pictured is actually Voss from the DJG.
Which I believe at that time Voss was not in the DJD, and he wasn't called Voss. He was called by his real name, which we'll find out much later on.
Which we'll find out much later on.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but yeah, that's our that's another like first in the More Than Meets the Eye.
That probably
lore,
explains
so to
why that particular Voss ended up becoming part of the DJD. You know,
Right.
you'd have to think Megatron had to work with each of those guys pretty closely before he was like, hey, I want you on my Justice Division, you know?
Right.
So,
Which that ties into the issue that we're getting into now with Delphi.
yeah, so they kind of make a landing because I believe Ratchet said that, you know, his good buddy Pharma, close friends, and again, just a swell guy. I want you all to know that Pharma's a great guy. Just you want to crack open a cold one with him. You know what I mean? So he was going there, I think, to kind of like make him basically chief medical officer. They get there and there's a big X on the door, which was the universal sign for
Stay the hell away.
Yes, stay the hell away. I was like, don't come in, run away, something. And of course, Drift and Pipes are with them, and they're like, well, hey, let's go on in. And like this is, I think, like where we start to see like Pipes really just gets the shit end of the stick. Like Pipes has the worst luck.
Right, which was a running joke all of season 1.
Yeah, or at least the first half of season 1. Not to spoil anything.
Yeah, and for
Pipes was in it for a little bit, right?
Do what?
Pipes was in it for a little bit, right? And therefore he got killed.
Well, yeah.
If I remember correctly.
Not to jump too far
Spoiler.
ahead. Right.
Yeah, but for any listeners who are confused with the terminology that we're using, like season 1, season 2, James Roberts officially designated that the More Than Meets the Eye 1 through 22, leading up to Dark Cybertron, was to be considered like season 1 if More Than Meets the Eye were a cartoon.
Oh, which it should be. But that's a topic for another day for sure.
Yeah.
But
So Pipes brashly busts through the door with a giant red axe, and they find a morgue full of corpses that are leaking rusty fluid.
so basically the what was that virus from 2014, 2015. The one that everyone was freaking out over that only like 2 people caught.
Ebola.
Yeah,
So
the Ebola. Yeah, it's basically Ebola.
it's basically Robo Ebola.
Yeah. Foreshadowing for real life events, huh? But
James Roberts, Illuminati member.
but yeah, then like wasn't one of them like kind of awake and he was like walking towards them? And
Yeah,
that's whenever
Drift
go ahead.
Drift just springs into action and decapitates him and stabs him. Like in
Like
his
one
in his,
wasn't
in
enough.
his in his super ninja samurai mode, like
Yeah, and then
which go ahead.
I was just gonna say, and then like they all get kind of covered in this Robo Ebola fluid that
Yep.
was leaking out of this guy. Like that, like that was the total smart thing to do. And I think Ratchet was even like, "Hey, don't get any of that shit on you." Like I think I think he was like trying to be kind of forewarning about it, but this is where we also kind of run into first aid, and if we'd kind of speak, while we're kind of on this, there were some seeds kind of planted in the hardcover volume of Last Stand of the Wreckers.
Yep, the bullet story.
Yeah, the bullet story where where this place in particular was mentioned, which I thought was really cool. And First Aid was even a subscriber to Physitron's Wreckers Declassified stuff, which was pretty cool. It's pretty cool they kind of brought all of this full circle as well. But just a nice little tidbit.
He was also recruited by Springer to look for messages that were implanted in the right eye of an Autobot sigil by the mole in the GJD.
Yeah, which will also kind of play into much later on. I think that's another season 2 story as well, isn't it?
Yep.
Yeah. So it's good stuff, man. But long story short, this particular planet was kind of in a DJD controlled territory in space, which like I think made Drift a little uneasy, even though he didn't show it, or at least it totally made Pipes uneasy. And Ratchet was like, "You want to see uneasy? Let Drift see your spark casing," talking about how that's what the Decepticon sigils were made from, which is
yeah, like they took part of your spark casing to make your Decepticon badge.
Yeah, that's some pretty brutal shit, man. Like, the Decepticons were already brutal, but that was definitely overcooking it.
Yeah, and I mean, like the whole scenes with Ultra Magnus, Tailgate, and Rodimus, like there's so much world building there where they talk about the Conclave and Megatron and the spark casing and the sigil, and then and there's also a funny scene with Rodimus and Ultra Magnus where Ultra Magnus is trying to tell Rodimus that Tailgate wants to be a Decepticon, and Rodimus is like, "Which one's Tailgate?"
Yeah.
And then I love this where Rodimus is saying how they all want to find the Knights of Cybertron, and Ultra Magnus is like, "This guy's only here because he lost a bet. Whirl's here by accident, and Skids is nobody knows what's going on with Skids."
It adds into that whole ragtag deal. Like it really,
Right.
man, it really is. Like More Than Meets the Eye was just it was gold straight from the start. I still think even through to Lost Light, I still think Lost Light's gold too. But I know a lot of people don't share that particular sentiment, but we'll get to it when we get to it.
Right.
But anyways, just basically summarize the whole Delphi thing. We also run into a character named Ambulon who doesn't transform for reasons, and we kind of find out that this virus is triggered through transformation. Like that's how it starts to show the effects. Because at one point both Drift and Pipes had to transform, and they both started showing the side effects. Pharma was the one that constructed it after trying to play the victim. In the meantime, First Aid jumpstarts Fortress Maximus because this is where he got sent to be repaired after the Battle of Garrus 9.
Yeah, where he was made to be just a
He was fucking
a torso,
lobotomized.
a torso, and a lockpick.
Yeah,
And we also got a little bit of world building here with the Triple M, the Militant Monoform movement.
Yeah.
Which is it plays into a certain Action Master's appearance later on in the series.
Oh yeah, I didn't even think about that. Now that you mention it, but yeah. So Ratchet kind of finds out, and like he chases after Pharma because Pharma obviously has the cure. At which point they're like on the very top of the base, and I think Ratchet has Pharma cornered. Or no. Ratchet had been infected too.
Yeah, and he's just bleeding everywhere out of his eyes, everything.
Yeah, but he's using his hollow matter avatar.
Yep.
To kind of like trick Pharma, and I think he'd basically talked to Pharma long enough to where his leaking had also infected Pharma, and then that's whenever they got to the top of the facility, and they were kind of having harsh words, and eventually was it Drift that came, because Pharma was like hanging off the edge, and Ratchet was like, well, you either help or you fall or you transform and then you die a horrible, painful death. And
yeah, well, what happened is Ratchet knocked Pharma off balance, and the antidote or the vaccine for the sickness, the rust sickness, went toppling off the side of the building, and Ratchet, like Pharma dove for it, and Ratchet got him into a position where he was hanging off the edge, and basically it was the choice of either fall and transform and then get the sickness, or trigger the sickness, or fall to your death because you don't want the sickness to get you.
yeah,
And then Drift, slicey comes and cuts Pharma's hands off and leaves the hands there, and Pharma falls.
he's like, Ratchet, I found you new hands.
Yeah,
because like that was the whole thing. Ratchet totally needed some new hands.
Right, and then more world building where we get the difference between forged and constructed cold, where the forged spots are rarer and older because they're basically built around a spark that was that appeared on Cybertron, and the constructed cold were basically bodies that they implanted sparks in. So.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And that's why Ratchet couldn't just replace his hands, because he was forged, and that's the importance of Pharma's hands. Is Pharma was also forged.
Pharma was also a psychopath.
Oh yeah,
Very psycho, and very, very funny. I thought he was funny.
The thing is, like, I think because we find out also in that story arc that the leader of the DJD has an addiction to changing modes, or was it changing his alt mode?
Well, it was he had an addiction to transformation cogs because he burned through his alt mode, or his transformation cogs, because he transformed so much.
Yeah.
And then was it? Also Red Alert is concerned about something he hears in the basement of the Lost Light, and he's talking to Rung about it, and he plays a audio recording that he captured, and it's just the words kill me, kill me, kill me, over and over. So there's something in the basement of the Lost Light, and Red Alert is concerned about it.
Which will play into, I think, the story arc, or 2 story arcs, or is it the story arc after the next one? I think
It's about there, but really quick before we move on from this issue, I love the opening pages with Fort Max taking out Sonic and Boom, where
man,
it's very it's very reminiscent of Overlord tearing Guzzle in half.
Yeah.
Fort Max does the same thing to one of those guys, and then the other one's making a run for it, and Fort Max sticks his head in the compartment in his chest and decapitates him by closing the door on his head. and it's like, I don't think the time on Garrus 9 affected Fort Max at all. He seems like he seems like a perfectly well-balanced individual.
Oh yeah, which I think that's actually a good segue into the next story arc, which is, they obviously they brought Fort Max back with them to the Lost Light, under, the stipulation that he talked to Rung. He definitely needed a psychiatrist after, because that was the first time that he woke up after the whole Garrus 9 thing. So, basically to kind of burn through that story, because we are about an hour in. He loses his shit and starts, having visions again, and he's literally like going throughout the Lost Light, and damn near killing bots that are blue and like kind of purple and white, basically Overlord colors.
Yeah,
are the bots that he's targeting. And then he locks himself into Rung's office, and he's kind of got Rung cornered, and he's like, "All right, Doc, time to talk," basically. Or he was using Rung as a hostage.
Right, because he wanted the Lost Light to go to Cybertron because he wanted Prowl to answer for taking 3. He wanted Prowl to answer for taking 3 years to get to Garrus 9 after the I don't know, what did they call it? I can't even remember. I don't have Last in the records in front of me. Basically the fall, like when all the Autobot outposts fell. I guess the Surge, maybe, or
yeah, that was during All Hell Megatron.
That's when it all happened, during All Hell Megatron. Every outpost all failed.
Yeah,
right, but they had a certain name for it. So yeah, so Whirl, who's the last person who should be talking to somebody who is not mentally stable. Yeah.
Doesn't he tell him to kill himself? Like, if I recall correctly, aren't those the exact words that come out of his mouth or his face? Because Fort Max had beat the living shit out of Whirl, because Whirl was in Rung's office, I think, talking to him.
Yep.
And oh my god, I'm gonna have to look this up now. Because I remember it being, I remember Whirl saying some like super just messed up stuff to Fort Max about the whole thing.
Fortress Maximus during that time period was messed up because of what Overlord did to him as well, so that screwed him up a bit.
Yeah, he had some severe PTSD.
Yeah, big time. And therefore, it's kind of funny. Every little thing had to deal with Prowl. It was like everybody else wanted to go after. It's like, man, Prowl, what did you do?
Oh, Prowl knows what he did. He was a douchebag, is what he did.
Oh, and then we also learn why Whirl was kicked out of the Wreckers.
Yeah, I can't remember if we learned that in Phase 1 or if this was whenever we found out about it. But he's like he basically tried to euthanize Springer while he was in recovery.
Wait a minute. World was in the records?
Yes.
Yeah,
he
World-
was. Oh, go ahead.
World was one of the original wreckers in the UK run.
Right, that I know about. Okay, that I know about. But was he in the IDW universe?
Yes.
Yeah, because he was a wrecker during Stormbringer.
And
Okay,
I
what
thought he
about-
was also on Pova as well.
Also, was he?
Yeah, he was. He was.
Because he was still technically part of the unit in Last Stand of the Wreckers, but like Roadbuster, he wasn't there. He wasn't for that particular Garrus 9 mission.
Yeah.
But we do find out that Whirl's trying to basically give Springer, take him off of life support, because he was brain dead, and he was just like, man, just let him die. So he put a Spark Eater on his chest, or an Energon Harvester or whatever, and Roadbuster caught him, and Roadbuster used the power of the veto, which we get a little bit of insight to, that if any record could kick out any other member, and no questions would be asked just by power of the veto. So like they could, they all could have done that, but it was a trust thing that they had, which I think was cool. I did get to the page though, with Whirl kind of laying impaled on the ground in Rung's office, and he says, "Listen, Max, in the hope that this can still have a happy ending, and speaking as someone who appreciates the challenges of adjusting to post-war life, I just want to say that there's still time for you to do the decent thing and kill yourself."
Wow.
Oh man.
That dude, there's something wrong with that dude.
Man,
Well-
dude, I love Whirl. Like, he's my favorite. He just does not give a shit.
There's something wrong with that.
Yeah, Whirl is definitely a couple cards short of a full Energon deck.
And this is and Rung's like, now Whirl, that may not be the most helpful, and Whirl interrupts and he's like, come on, blow yourself away. Let's see a spark spasm up close. Just, dude.
But he also know how to touch his nerve there too. He's very good there with that.
Oh yeah, but see, Fort Max just like takes the end of his gun and just slams it into his face a couple of times, and Fort Max is like, well, is there anything else? Because the third strike's gonna break your brain in half. So, anyways, so Fort Max is highly volatile in Rung's office. Rodimus orders, because they found out about Swerve's illegal bar. So Rodimus has Swerve on rivets duty on the outside of the ship, and the gun can be switched to a laser, and so he tells Swerve and Rewind to, get to Rung's office and do what they can to basically take out Fort Max, shoot to kill, whatever. Now, this is where we get the running joke of Swerve and his bad aim.
Yep.
Because Rewind uses some footage from the Garrus 9 event to distract Fortress Maximus, and he projects it through the window of Rung's office. And so Fort Max is just kind of like, he's put in a haze because, he sees Overlord again, and, that fear, that PTSD strikes him. And, from there, Swerve takes the shot, and he takes the worst shot possible, and he blows Rung's head off.
Oh wow!
So not really the best. And I think at that point, I can't remember actually what happened after that. I think
Whirl stabs Fort Max through the chest to incapacitate him, and then that event is over, and then we have Rodimus talking to Drift about Red Alert being a liability, and we get our first view of the person in the basement, which ironically, given Fort Max's visions, we see that Overlord is chained up in the bottom of the Lost Light, saying, "Kill me, kill me."
Wow.
Yeah.
That is
Super cliffhanger.
that is messed up. That is messed up.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when I saw that page, I was like, "Holy fucking shit! What the hell's going on?"
Yeah, because last time we saw Overlord, he was
well, he was a flaming
a
skeleton.
Yeah.
So next issue, we get to see the DJD in action, and we see a little recap of Black Shadow's history with the Decepticons, where he took out 3 wreckers during their 11th iteration. Takes out the 113th or he fights the 113th Battalion, which seems to have Pyro from Last Stand of the Wreckers, Cup, Ultra Magnus, Orion Pax, and Nightbeat are the ones that I can pull out from there. And he had 3,003 kills. And then we also see him versus the population of Rigel 4, 4, and his kill count there is 3 billion. So we're just seeing that, and that being his duty as a Phase 6er, which Phase 6ers were charged with basically glassing a planet to make way for terraforming. And we get our first look at Tarn, leader of the DJD, whose identity was a mystery for all of Season 1 and most of Season 2. And they're torturing Black Shadow, who has no legs, and he's in an electric chair, which turns out to be DJD member Kaon. And all the DJD members are named after cities. The first 5 cities that the Decepticons conquered in their rise to power.
I have
And
Claritin and Zyrtec.
so Tarn recites a little bit of Megatron's manifesto towards peace while he's talking to Black Shadow. And we learn that Tarn has the ability of weaponized speech, where he can whisper a spark to death, and we see Black Shadow go boom. And then we see the 5 DJD members talking about the list, which being that their job is to hunt down anybody who has gone against the Decepticon code or otherwise been a threat to Megatron's Decepticon dream of conquest in the universe. They talk about the list, and they found a new member, or a new entry in the list who's nearby. And next we see Rung on a med slab, and Red Alert's talking to him. And something that we didn't touch on earlier, but the Metabay on the Lost Light has medical drones that look like the drones that Beast Machine's Megatron had when he was the leader of Cybertron. And Red Alert mentions Overlord, and we see the blue eye on the medical drone turn to red, which means that they're also spying for somebody who we don't know. And then we get our excuse me. Then we get our introduction to the fan favorite group of miscreant Decepticons known as the Scavengers, who consist of Spinster, Crankcase, Flywheels, Croc, Misfire, and they come upon a Decepticon who we learn is his name escapes me right now. So Fulcrum, and they're on a battlefield full of corpses. on. Anyways, apologize to the listeners. I'm doing a bad job of recapping here.
Oh, I'm
but,
right here. I'm here. I'm here.
Okay. So the scavengers are talking to Fulcrum. Misfire is, the snarky mouth of the scavengers. And Spinster, we learn, is a bit of a simpleton who is, as Misfire says, if he seems distracted by his own fingers, it's because, and I present this as an empirical truth, he is truly the stupidest person in the entire universe.
Wow.
And then we have Flywheels, who is not a duocon, but he's a triple changer, and he suffers from psychosomatic hyperflexia, which means he can't tell without changing shape. Which
Wow.
He says that's not true.
That's
He changes his shape.
it's not true, and he changes shape. And here we have Croc, who, tying back to the Delphi arc, he is a member of the militant monoform movement. And Croc was also in Action Master back in, was it 88? 87?
88 or 89. No, 90. 90.
Oh, wow. Okay, 88 or 90. So nice callback to his G1 origins. And Dakota, you want to take the reins here, or for?
Well, I mean, it's fine. Like, I'm actually not 100% familiar with the story. I kind of like glazed through it. Have we already talked about Crankcase? Because that one was my favorite.
Oh yeah. No, I didn't.
Oh, okay.
I didn't mention Crankcase, but
He's got
yeah,
head trauma, and if he smiles, like, he's always frowning because if he smiles, like, his head's gonna cave in or something like that. I thought that shit was hilarious.
yeah, I love the language that James Roberts uses in some instances, because Misfire says, the thing is, if he smiles, his precarious cranial architecture will collapse and he'll die.
Wow.
He's the only Decepticon who can be killed by a single punchline.
Wow. Are you serious? You can be killed with a punchline.
Yeah,
Wow.
because if he smiles, his head will just cave in on itself, apparently.
Oh, man. That's...
So, next scene, we are in Brainstorm's laboratory. Because I've been told, I think I read somewhere that Brainstorm actually, James Roberts writes him with a British accent in mind.
Oh, no.
That makes
no.
sense. That makes so much sense.
So that's why I say laboratory. And we see a couple things in the background. We see some strange insect-like creatures in green jars, which we will call back to later on in the storyline. And there's the briefcase, obviously, the ever-present briefcase. And Chrome Dome and Brainstorm are talking about Skid's gun, which apparently Skids doesn't realize he has a gun in his hand unless someone puts it out to him, which is part of his ongoing amnesia, which we learn about the reason for that later on. We also have mention of the Institute, which I think that's the first mention of the Institute in the IDW universe.
Yeah, and we'll totally. I believe that's the next story arc too, because they, that's it all in the flashback stuff. I think that's whenever we see that.
The Shadowplay storyline, which is coming up next, deals largely with the Institute, and so back to the Scavengers. They're talking about the war, and Fulcrum's kind of being brought up to speed on the end of the war, and they're all huddled around a fire, which is actually made out of the carcass of an Autobot who is he is apparently still alive, and Croc unceremoniously executes him when he pipes up, because he doesn't like being a fire for for 6 Decepticons. And back to Rung, the data slug that Red Alert slipped into his hand, or his thumb hole, which he lost his thumb in the experience with Fort Max. Someone takes the data slug, and now we have one, the Decepticon symbol ship, which that is a mystery that has yet to be fully revealed, right, Dakota?
I think so. I think they talked about like what kind of ship that it was, because it would fly overhead, and so that way whenever people looked up, like that's all that they would see, and I think that's what the K class jumped out of.
Yeah, they call the symbol ship a D-class world sweeper.
Yeah.
And it's a veritable house of horrors for the scavengers, because they find a room with brain modules stuck to the ceiling. They find another room with half-formed protoforms in tanks, and Croc finds a robot made out of wood.
Oh.
And, so they're all and then Fulcrum and Spinster find the room that is like covered in flesh, like it's bleeding. Like they find a bleeding room, so it's very reminiscent of like The Shining or something like that. So while they're pontificating on what all these strange things in the symbol ship could mean, they get a message from the DJD, and Tarn informs them that one of them has earned a spot on the list, and they want them to surrender, whoever it is, and
giving them time, to where they won't all be guilty, basically.
Right, he's given 15 minutes to figure out what they want to do, if they want to give up the list inhabitant. And he says that the 6 of you will watch him die. And they're like, there's 6 of us, so how is 6 going to watch? And Croc makes the discovery of Grimlock in a stasis pod. And that's the first time we've seen him since Garrus 9. Well, actually, we didn't see him in Garrus 9, but
I've heard about him, yeah.
He was locked up on Garrus 9 after Maximum Dinobots.
Which was very interesting, because I still don't think that they have kind of told us how Grimlock got there either.
Nope, that's and I mean that's a storyline that is still ongoing in More Than Meets the Eye / Lost Light, and it's probably the one that interests me the most, just because of to not to get too far ahead, but there are mysterious figures associated with the world class, or the world sweepers, and we know very little about them. And James Roberts, hopefully once he wraps up the current story arc in Lost Light, hopefully he goes back to that, because I'd really like to see that resolved at some point soon. But next episode, next
it's basically the next episode, let's be honest.
Next issue, we have a flashback of Fulcrum in service, and we learn he's talking to a Decepticon named Torque, who, if you look very closely, he has the word Ultra written on his back.
I think you're getting a little too far ahead.
No. You can see.
Oh, you're not?
You can see Ultra written on his back, which we'll figure out where.
Oh, okay.
We'll figure out where that comes into play later on. But being that I like to, point out things for the listeners in case they missed them, because I know it's a lot to digest even when you're reading it one issue at a time. So the K-class robots that Fulcrum was, they're basically bombs. So their service to the Decepticon cause is to transform into a bomb and explode and die for the Decepticon cause.
I think it's all because they ended up doing something that basically got them put on the list, and it was either they had the option, depending on what their crime was, either the DJD could just execute them on the spot, or they could make up for it and make the ultimate sacrifice for the cause, basically. If I'm remembering that right.
Yeah, it's basically they were refitted into K-class bodies, and they had the option of either dying horribly at the hands of the DJD or becoming bombs and furthering the Decepticon agenda.
Yeah, and man, seeing that, I know it's just the most ridiculous thing, but since we're kind of talking about the scavengers, that's something I would like to see at a future point in 3D plastic form. Are the scavengers, and I would love for MMC to do that, just to kind of get off on a little toy tangent real quick, and I'd love to see Fulcrum, just a transformer that turns into a bomb.
That'd be cool. That would be. You know what? Have any third party done that yet?
Nope.
No, nobody's touched the scavengers outside of actually Mech Idea's Piston. He predated the scavengers, so
which sucks, man. If I would have known, I would have totally picked up Piston, because I picked up Gauntlet and I love Gauntlet. But I don't know. I really haven't even looked for Piston to know how much he would cost.
He should be readily available, because like you, a lot of people went for Gauntlet, which was the Mech Ideas Iron Fist. So I'm sure if you search around at your preferred online retailer or at a convention, I'm sure you can find a crank case figure.
Yeah.
Okay, so we got the scavengers talking about what they should do because they're scared out of their wits, DJD, and they come to Crankcase comes to the decision that they should fight because the Decepticon badge is he basically makes a speech like it's our badge, not theirs, meaning like the DJD are I guess what you could say they're kind of frowned upon by the Decepticon rank and file because they're mostly just sadists and insane torturers.
They take pleasure in killing their own too.
Right.
So, yeah.
So it kind of gives you a view into like the Decepticons believing in the cause. For the sake of the cause itself, not just because Megatron says so.
Yeah.
And then let's see, it's this. So Chrome and Skids are talking in the oil refinery, the Lost Light, and I believe this is the episode, or the episode. I keep saying that. Yeah. Okay. So this is the issue where Chrome Dome uses his pneumosurgery needles to look at Skid's memories, and he's horrified by what he sees, and he refuses to tell Skids what's going on in his memory banks. basically telling him he's better off not knowing what he's forgotten, which is another mystery seed sown. And now, okay, gonna point some things out here that not a lot of people pay attention to. When we see the DJD land, Kaon is holding Voss, and Tesaurus and Helix are in the background. You see Tarn transform, let's see, from tank to robot mode coming down the ramp, from robot to tank mode, driving away towards the scavengers, and then back from tank to robot mode when he comes upon Grimlock in the coffin, or the stasis tube. So, like, in one page, we see Tarn transform 3 times.
Which makes sense given his addiction.
Well, not a lot of people picked up on that, because when Coulter came out from MMC, a lot of people complained that his transformation was too simplistic. I'm like, well, it's got to be simplistic because he transforms so much. And nobody got that, and I was like, okay, look at this page of More Than Meets the Eye. The guy transforms 3 times in 3 panels, and nobody in the comic does that much.
No, but it's nice. It was a nice little visual of his little addiction there.
Yeah.
I didn't know that they had addictions. I didn't know that. That's the first time I'm hearing it.
Yeah, well, I mean, it makes sense. Like that's another thing. Like that's why I like, these newer Phase 2 books a lot more than kind of the original sort of run. Is we see the more kind of human side of the Transformers. Like they're kind of day-to-day stuff. Like they're not all just they don't just pick up a gun and fight and then put it down and that's it. They all want want like personal relationships and even romantic relationships, and they all struggle. Like Trailbreaker has a thing. He's basically a drunk, and Tarn has his own addiction, and yeah. So I mean, it's I like that they kind of incorporated just every little aspect of life into that. It's not just Optimus versus Megatron and the Autobots versus the Decepticons. It's more than that. But
yeah, I mean, I like that James Roberts. He had to flesh out a book where there's no war, so you have to kind of focus on the character nuances of each character. The Scavengers spring their trap on the DJD. Grimlock is jacked up on circuit speeders, which I guess would probably be like...
Would that be like cocaine?
Yeah, we'll call it robo-cocaine.
Whoa, wait a minute. Are you serious? They brought cocaine or...
Well, no, I mean, Dakota and I are just, kind of using analogies.
I'm just saying, they in Grimlock, oh, wow.
No,
I mean, circuit speeders, like, I'm thinking, that's totally speed.
Or like
crank,
speed.
maybe.
Or speed or something.
Yeah, like, so... Yeah, or crank, but we're still just kind of hovering in the neighborhood of, robo drugs.
Drugs are bad, okay? Don't do drugs.
I guess circuit speeders would be like an adrenaline boost. There, let's make it more medical than street drug. So he's hopped up on adrenaline and he starts taking it to the DJD. And they start fighting back, and the Scavengers are like, it looks like he's getting tired, we should probably split. And then we see the DJD start torturing the Scavengers. Unfortunately, Flywheels does not does not survive, because Tesaurus jams him into his chest cavity, which is basically a giant food processor for robots.
What's funny? He was trying to, he was trying to put him in feet first, But since he had such large feet, he had to turn him around.
Yeah. And I guess it's probably a callback to the Flywheels toy, being that like the bottom half was the tank and it was like the whole tank. So I don't know. I'd like to think so, but maybe I'm just projecting. And then we learned Voss has a hidden feature on his face mask. It's filled with spikes and drills, and he very creepily tells Croc to wear my face. And
which we find out that Voss, which I don't know if you talked about this earlier when I was on, but he speaks mostly in Old Cybertronian.
No, I didn't touch on that, and that's a good point. Voss is, I guess, Cybertronian Basic, or whatever they call their language, is not his natural tongue. He speaks in Old Cybertronian. So you basically see, whenever Voss is talking and they don't translate it, it's basically the symbols from the Michael Bay movies in bubble form. So,
but like Tarn can understand him, which works.
Yeah, so he's our translator. And Misfire proves that he's a terrible shot when he tries to shoot Kaon and shoots Croc right in the chest 3 times.
Wow.
And we see the pet, the GJD pet, who is apparently a spark eater, or as Kaon says, a spark chewer.
Which I thought he was like a little Turbo Fox though.
Yeah, like
And I thought his name was Spark Eater. Like I thought that's what they named him.
no, he's just called the pet.
Oh, okay.
Anytime they refer to him, but he's some kind of rabid-looking Turbo Fox, or at least he appears that way.
Overshadowing, nice.
So Tarn whispers sweet nothings into Grimlock's ears, and then Crankcase shows up with the giant Decepticon Mighty Mega Puncher, as he named the exosuit, which has Decepticon symbols on the knees and a Decepticon symbol on the chest, and its head is kind of a Decepticon symbol like Transformers Prime Soundwave. So somebody was really, really overzealous with their branding.
Oh yeah, Megatron wanted that awareness everywhere.
He's like, Megatron was like, okay guys, brand recognition. When we take over the universe, we want people to know who's in charge, and it's going to be the Decepticons.
Yeah, that was it really shows how vain Megatron really was. Like, and that we'll kind of see with Rodimus later on, with the whole Rodimus Star thing. They had so much in common from the get-go.
So Fulcrum makes a grand speech about what it means to be a Decepticon and how the DJD aren't Decepticons. And he transforms into bomb mode, and he's a dead. So, and then Kaon tells that guy with the Decepticon face, Tarn.
Coulter? Yeah, that guy.
That guy. He tells Tarn that they found Overlord, and because he's the biggest fish on the list, the GJD leave the... God, I'm a terrible narrator. I'm never gonna host again.
You're doing a good job there, dude. You're doing a good job.
So
I couldn't bring myself to narrate. I'm just here to listen because I had the issues, and I'm just trying to think like, okay, this did happen. I'm trying to remember myself. So it's been a while for me since I read it. So keep doing your thing.
All right. Thank you for the words of encouragement, Walter. I appreciate it. So because Overlord is the biggest fish on the list, the GJD depart to leave the scavengers, and we have an epilogue where here, Dakota, is where they explain how they become K-Class. Fulcrum was convicted of cowardice, and his sentence was to become a K-class. And here we see Torque's alt mode of a bomb, and it definitely says Ultra Magnus on the front of his bomb. So I don't know if that means if he's got a hard-on for Ultra Magnus, or if Ultra Magnus is there.
I think we'll find out. We'll find out soon enough.
And poor Grimlock, he's just a simpleton, and he's staring at his hand like Spinster was earlier in the episode.
At least I think, man, I don't know, and we'll cover it later on whenever we do talk about the other issues revolving around the scavengers. But I think it's a ruse, But it's really believable because he was subjected to some pretty terrible shit just between Shockwave and the whole Garrus 9 thing as well.
Yeah.
So
I'm really looking forward to that storyline being wrapped up at some point.
Yeah.
But again, a little more analysis than narration. I love when Spinster's explaining that Grimlock is still alive. He says he started making little noises. First it was frightening, then it was funny, then it was kind of sad. Now it's funny again.
I liked at the end, whenever Tarn took off, he was like, I got a bigger fish to fry, but consider all of you, on the list.
You're on the list.
Yeah.
Oh, and we have the first appearance of the Necrobot, the mysterious Necrobot who visits. And I'm sorry, and sorry to our listeners. The Necrobot was mentioned in the beginning of the last issue because Misfire has an obsession with trying to find him. Because the Necrobot is considered a battlefield myth at this point, and we actually see him in person. And on his datapad, 18 months later, after the fight with the GTD, we have a very peculiar list of deceased, being Hound, Chrome Dome, Dipstick, Drift, Ultra Magnus, and Flywheels.
Yeah.
So
at first I thought that was like the list that Kaon dropped. Whenever I read it the first time, I thought it was the DJD list just because I saw Flywheels on there.
Right.
And I saw Drift on there, and I was like, well, I know he's on the list. But that is pretty interesting.
That's
Very overshadowing. That's another Scene 2 overshadow thing.
Yeah, that's a foreshadow for season 2, which we will discuss on a future episode. So what are we at, Dakota, as far as our running time right now?
We're at an hour 36. I think it'll be somewhat easy to sum up Shadowplay, honestly.
Yeah.
So
okay, I'll try my best to do it in as little time as possible without glossing over everything.
So I think we have Shadowplay, and then we have the thing that comes after that, and then the annual,
Dark Cybertron,
and then the stuff with Tyrist. So we got 4 arcs. Shouldn't take too long.
All right, so Shadowplay is set up as they want to get Rung's memories back because apparently Rung somehow survived being shot through the head, and his brain module is left intact, but he's in a comatose state. So Rewind comes up with the idea that if they tell stories to the dormant Rung, they might trigger something in his brain module to bring him out of his coma, so to speak. So everyone involved, which I think the gathered parties are Drift, Ratchet, Skids, Whirl, and Rewind, and Chrome Dome. If I'm missing anybody, I'm sure our listeners can let us know in the comments. So, the story largely revolves around Orion Pax, Super Cop, and his mysterious senator friend that we were introduced to in in Chaos Theory. So, basically, we find out that Orion Pax is Super Cop. Prowl and Chrome Dome were partners in the mecha forensics department of the Cybertronian police force, and they're investigating a murder of a senator.
We also isn't this where we find out Chrome Dome's real name too?
I believe so. And I don't know how much of a meta joke it is because his real name is Tumblr, and if you look at
his name is Tumblr.
You're right, because everyone who worked at the Institute got nicknames, and like you have Highbrow, and basically all the headmasters worked at the Institute. So you have Brainstorm, Highbrow, Chrome Dome, and Hardhead wasn't there, but he's a headmaster nonetheless. So there goes a hole in my theory. So the Institute was a place where shady goings-on happened under the Autobot regimes, under Zeta and Sentinel, and so they Prowl traces the corpse, which is a senator named Momus, with a giant Decepticon symbol painted on his back. Prowl traces it to an apartment complex in another part of I guess Icon is where they're stationed.
Like a very upper class part too, I think, where like everyone was like alt mode exempt.
Right, yeah, because at this point in history, just to give a little world building to the listeners, the Functionist Council was still very much in power, and your alt mode determined your status in society. So miners, with their alt mode being drill tanks, scavengers or whatever, were like the lower rungs, and flyers were, obviously a rare breed, so they were upper class, I guess. So we learned a couple of things like body gloving, where people would have their sparks transferred
Sounds
into.
super sexy too, by the way.
People would have their sparks transferred into other bodies, and we learned because Chrome Dome chases a suspect who obviously doesn't know how to fly, and crashes into a giant billboard. And I do apologize, I don't have the issues in front of me right now. But I believe the billboard was super ironic. Dakota, I don't know if you have the issues.
It said something like get a new body today if if you're tired of your current body, if you wanted to be a flyer or something like that. If you were a car and wanted to be a flyer, I can't really remember exactly either.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean you got the gist of it. So
yeah, very ironic nonetheless.
So and I do apologize, maybe I'm not the best to narrate this, but anyways, so Orion Pax is Super Cop. Oh, Tailgate's there, because Tailgate's listening because he wants to learn more about, what's been happening in the past 6 million years. So come to find out that there is a Decepticon registration act, basically, where Nominus Prime said that if they gather a certain number of Decepticon signatures, they'll recognize them as a legit political party. And come to find out that Nominus and Sentinel actually plan on using a bomb. Who's the Prime that is dead?
Zeta Prime.
No, I don't think it was Zeta. And, hold on, I can actually.
I want to say it was Nominus's funeral.
Oh,
Because
okay.
it was Zeta, or it was Sentinel.
Or Sentinel, that's right.
It was Sentinel that I think was in control. Yeah, Sentinel was in control because I think this was Nominus. Nominus had died, but it was Sentinel and the Council. I think were trying to kind of nip that in the, or was it Zeta? Man, fuck it. It doesn't matter.
It was Zeta. Zeta Prime died. It was all.
Yeah, but I thought
Megatron.
Sentinel came before Zeta because Zeta.
Yeah, Zeta was in the, and he was like basically the last Prime before Optimus.
And
well, I mean,
Megatron had killed Sentinel, in All Hail Megatron, and that's whenever Zeta took control, and Zeta was the Prime in Autocracy.
Megatron Origins.
Yeah, my bad. So it had to have been Nominus. It had to have been Nominus's funeral, because I think it was Sentinel that was.
Okay, because Proteus. Okay, Proteus's promise. I'm sorry. Okay, it's all back to me now.
Yeah.
Proteus was a
Information
senator.
creep. It's in the title.
Yeah. Proteus was a senator who he made a promise if they gathered enough Decepticon signatures, he would recognize them as a legitimate political party. But what they actually planned to do was there was a bomb in a replica matrix in Nominus's chest that they were going to detonate. Basically, to create a terrorist attack to blame on the Decepticons, and the list was actually going to be used to round them up. So Optimus Prime and his senator friend, who he runs the Geoxis school for like gifted individuals. Basically, it's like Geoxis's, Geoxis's Xavier Mansion. And we learn about outliers in this the storyline, being that an outlier is a robot who has an ability that is not related to his alt mode. Examples being Trailbreaker's force field, Glitch. There's a name to remember. Glitch in his ability. Glitch in his ability to disrupt electrical devices, Skid's super learning ability, and Windcharger's magnetic abilities.
I do want to touch on this, like before we continue with the whole Glitch part. They say Glitch he can disrupt electrical things by touch, and he says one day he'll be able to do it from a distance.
Foreshadowing.
Very. Without even anyone knowing, you know what I mean? That's what's crazy. We'll get to it later, but yeah, super
And
foreshadow.
so we learn about Imperata, if I'm saying it right, which is the functionist and the Senate's way of punishing people who didn't go along with what they wanted. Most times it was in the form of taking the head and hands of the quote-unquote guilty. In the case of Whirl, that's why he's got one eye and he's got claws for hands. And so we also learn about Shadow Play, which is a dirty secret of the Institute, where they basically mind scramble people and change their personalities. So Orion Pax hatches a plan to swap out a replica of the Matrix with the bomb, and so it's an Ocean's 11 type heist where we see a couple of Easter eggs. Like I think there's triple changers in the security forces in the funeral, and was it? Excuse me. We see Triple Changers in the security force at the funeral, and we also get to see Iron Fist again, good old Iron Fist, in a flashback.
He's obsessed
Because
with Delta Magnus.
yeah, and he constantly says the word glorious, which apparently was Delta Magnus's catchphrase.
Yeah.
So they get a replica of the Matrix, and then Orion Pax and Ratchet, Skids, Windcharger, they all successfully without any, or not without any hiccups in the plan, they successfully retrieve the bomb and place fake Matrix in Nominus's chest. Meanwhile, Chrome Dome and the Senator friend and Roller, how could I forget Roller, Optimus's best buddy, are back at the police station, and they're visited by some unsavory characters, and they basically overpower Roller and Chrome Dome, and they take the Senator friend hostage. And during the story arc, there were a lot of questions as to the identity of the Senator friend, because he did change his color scheme on a few times, and people thought that it might be old Magnus, because there was a point where he had a red, white, and blue color scheme.
But I think they had kind of mentioned it early on, like he was obsessed with his looks. He always wanted to have like the in paint,
Right, yeah. So ironic, being that the fate that befell him.
Oh, dude.
So Senator Friend is taken hostage, and Orion Pax arrives. Orion Pax catches up with the unsavory types, and he beats them up, and then throws the bomb like a football, and blows it up. And and I do apologize to the listeners. So come to find out, the big shock reveal at the end of Shadowplay is that the Senator friend becomes a victim of Shadowplay and Emperata, which is the worst combination of punishment that an enemy of the Senate can endure.
It's the ultimate form of shame. Yeah.
Right, because they not only did they take this charismatic, angry, idealistic senator and totally wipe away his personality and left him as only a purely logical being, but they basically did his whole body, because he was a very stylized robot, and on the final page we see that the mystery senator was Shockwave, and he's getting his head replaced with his very classic hexagonal, one-eyed.
Yeah. Cyclops
one-eyed,
face.
Cyclops. That's the word I was looking for. His hexagonal Cyclops head, and he has claws instead of hands,
which we'll find out in I think one of the later RIG. Yeah.
Yeah, one of the Dark Cybertron preludes, we actually find out about that. So sorry you had to suffer through my my narration of that with no source material in front of me. But
I will point out though that and we'll get to it eventually anyways. But for anyone who may be quizzical, he does still remain a senator. It's not like he just
Oh yeah, he does. Okay.
Yeah, it's not like they just kind of dump him and that's it. But no, he's still a senator. He's just not as open about all of the things that happened to him, because again, he's just logical and emotionless now. So they took away his drive, his fire, and they also took away his devilishly good looks.
They took away everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, something we did miss the annual. I think we were supposed to talk about the annual before
Yeah,
this.
and I was just gonna swing back around. Not
Before you
that
do
it's
that,
critical.
we
Yeah.
can wrap up. I was gonna say let's go ahead and wrap up the end of the shadow play thing. Apparently, the whole story did not do anything for Rung, but Skids, being the theoretician that he is, he just kind of walks up to him and he goes, "Is it ring?" And he's saying some couple of things. He says, "Is it ring? Is it rang? Is it?"
Right.
Yeah, and then finally, Rung pipes up. He says, "It's Rung." So that's what ultimately got Rung kind of back to going. But
Yeah, it's fun. It's funny that the plan didn't work at all, but then Skids, brainstormed an idea of what might work. So the annual 2012, which I think that was the we ever got for More Than Meets the Eye, opens with a group of Autobots in a mechanical-looking corridor fighting scraplets, or is that what they are?
they're basically like, yeah. I mean, they're like little bacteria. I think I don't know exactly what they're called, but they are, little nasty dudes.
So, come to find out that they are actually fighting in Ultra Magnus's mouth, and he's had some kind of infestation in his body, and they're trying to clear it out, and they're very tiny sized, which I'm guessing is a callback to was it Cosmic Rust? Was that the one where the Autobots or no? Was the G1 episode where the Autobots got
Cosmic
shrunk
Rust.
down? Oh, was it Cosmic Rust?
Yes.
Okay, so they're shrunk down. They're fighting in Ultra Magnus's mouth, and I guess they're not supposed to fire guns, but Whirl is there, so I think he fired off one gun. But anyways, so Ultra Magnus comes to in the middle of them fighting while they're in his mouth, and he's communicating with Ratchet over radio frequency, and he freaks out a little bit when he finds out that Whirl is inside his mouth. And First aid tells him that he needs to engage like the pistons in his mouth to destroy the scraplet infestation, and basically it means Ultra Magnus has to smile.
Says, "I want you to activate your mouth pistons and do this," and he's like, "I'm not sure I can."
Yeah, and Ratchet's like, just give me a great big smile. And,
I'm looking at it right now.
I love it.
The picture of Magnus smile, it's like a picture perfect like shit-eating grin.
Yeah.
It's every time I read this, I just start cackling at Magnus smiling, because you don't see it. Like, you never see it. And then he does it, and it's just like this perfect smile. The shit is hilarious.
Yeah, and then he's like, this is the most humiliating day of my life. Like, because he's such a straight arrow, he doesn't even smile. So he's walking down the corridor, and then we also get to see his view of the world again, where he's summarizing everyone he walks across. And Atomizer has a crossbow, and Ultra Magnus is like, I better take that crossbow, Atomizer. And Atomizer's just like, he's lost all respect of the respect of the whole crew, because Atomizer's like, yeah, whatever you say, Smiler. And
oh man, what he says to Jackpot though, like Jackpot's come back. Badge is looking a little crooked there, Jackpot, and he's like, a bit like your smile, eh? Oh man.
And then Trailbreaker, don't let him upset you, Magnus. Try to grin and bear it. And then so sad, Ultra Magnus sees his reflection, and his designation is duly appointed enforcer of the Tyrus Accord and Laughingstock.
Yeah.
Ultra Magnus's feelings are hurt. So Dakota, I need to step away for a minute if you want to take over the rest of the annual summarization.
Oh yeah, I can burn through it.
Yeah,
I
I'm right
appreciate
here.
But anyways, later at this point, there's like some conversations are being had. You can see kind of Chrome Dome and Rewind just having some conversations, and Chrome Dome's, he's kind of got a headache because every time he uses his needles for the, checking out people's memories and things like that, it really takes a toll on. And then Cyclonus and Tailgate there, both kind of talking, having a little heart to heart, but and then we see we see Swerve walking through, going to the engine rooms, and he's kind of bummed out because I don't think he has a roommate, and he sees Orr, who's still kind of trapped into the quantum engine at this point, which, again, that's something to sort of keep in mind from issue number 2, I believe. And what's really clever is, Swerve kind of freaks out, but you can see that Orr is saying, "Help me, please, help me," but it's backwards. So it's all spelled backwards, the whole quantum engine thing and, all that other stuff. And Swerve freaks out. Meanwhile, Rodimus is talking to Drift, and I think this is where someone said something about Tailgate wanting to become a Decepticon, but either way, Rodimus is like, he's got a knife in his hand, and he's like, been kind of drawing on his disc with it, just kind of carving into it. And that's something, again, to keep in mind for a later story arc. But anyways, he's doing that. Something I will point out here is the let's see. Oh, that's right. This is long after Tailgate wanted to become an Autobot. He was actually getting the Auto brand, and Rodimus was giving it to him. And that's what Tailgate and Cyclonus were talking about. He wanted Cyclonus to be there for him. So they're all sitting there, ready for the ceremony. And you see Jackpot, and he's like, "Okay, everyone, give me your times, please." Chrome Dome says 10 minutes. Rewind says 5 minutes. Brainstorm says 8 seconds. And Ratchet's like, "What are you guys doing?" And that's whenever Chrome Dome says Jackpot's taking bets on the speech and how long before Rodimus says, "Till all are one. Winner gets free drinks all night. We haven't told Swerve yet." Poor Swerve, man. So then you see Whirl and First Aid talking, and Whirl's like, or no. First Aid's like, "You left graffiti on the inside of Magnus's mouth," which was also hilarious. But anyways, let's see. Rodimus is kind of focusing on some other things. Let's see. He's giving Tailgate the Auto brand deal, and during his speech, he says just a handful of words, and then he says, "When all are one," and then you see a speech bubble come from across the way. It says 5 seconds. That counts, which is hilarious. But then there's some things going on in the meta bay, like some of the Transformers that are offline have been, like, they start screaming and needing their ears covered, and they're like borderline like crushing their cranial units and things like that. So Rodimus is drawing, or he's attempting to draw the Auto brand onto Tailgate, but all you see are these little squiggly lines, which is very, very strange. But again, we'll kind of see that later. But come to find out, they're close to the planet that the Circle of Light was on, because they were like, hey, Drift was like, well, we'll find the Circle of Light, because they were followers of the Knights of Cybertron. Like that, they took all of that like super personal. Come to find out, the Galactic Council was in the area, and I believe they were in the Galactic Council's port of space. And the Galactic Council was actually formed for, maybe not for. I think it was for the Transformers Civil War, or the Cybertronian Civil War. And so they send. They see that the ship is called the Benign Intervention for what it's worth, and the captain of the ship sees that Ultra Magnus is there, be that he's the duly enforcer of the Tyrus Accord. I think I said that right. If I didn't, whatever.
You know,
So that he gets.
I'm going to say something. You know what I noticed? Damn, they had a lot of ships.
Yeah, they really did.
They had a lot of ships, and it's like, man. And I just thought about it. I'm like, we don't hardly hear too much of the Ark, which is, well, they call it the Ark 19, at the beginning of the series.
Yeah,
but, man,
we find out, that there was an Ark 1, the real, the first Ark, which was, Nova Prime ship.
Yeah.
So.
And it's, man, they had a lot of ships. It's like, man.
And we see that, and that's something we see about Rung, that he's a kind of model ship collector, which was cool. But anyways, they asked permission. Ultra Magnus specifically, I believe, asked permission for the Galactic Council to, let them send a team down there. They were looking for the Circle of Light, and he would come aboard and speak with him. And so he did. And the team gets down there, and then they see that the planet is basically empty, and they're looking for them, and they end up finding a Titan. Meanwhile, Magnus is on the Benign Intervention talking to that particular ship's captain, who's trying to persuade Ultra Magnus to join the Galactic Council, which that's not something that any Cybertronian has been a part of, because they were annexed from the council itself. But being that Magnus was so entrusted by Tyrus that he was willing to do that, was really something. But then Magnus is kind of thinking about it, but then we kind of flash back to Team Rodimus, so to call it, which was Drift and Ratchet, and I believe Cyclonus and Chrome Dome, looks like Skids, were all a part of it. We're down there on this Titan, and then Chrome Dome decides he's going to interface with the Titan's brain module to see what happened to it. Why it was there, because it was still alive, but it was kind of in pain. It kept wanting to go home because it got the call from Optimus Prime, to come home. So he does it, and then you see a lot of these bots that Skids was fighting in issue number 2, and it looks like some members of the Circle of Light, his Diatlas and his group, and the group that Drift stayed with for a while after he changed from his bad Decepticon ways. But Chrome Dome interfacing with the Titan causes it to shoot lasers out of its eyes, which ultimately are able to leave the planet's atmosphere, and it actually beams through and hits a part of the Galactic Council ship. At which point, that guy thinks that it's a kind of backstabbing thing, so he transports Ultra Magnus back to the Lost Light, and then they encapsulate the Lost Light into, they call it like a heat bubble or something like that. Let's see. Oh, well, I'm kind of like glancing at it right now, but it's basically they put it in a sphere, and the temperature keeps raising to where it would essentially melt whatever's inside of it. But at that point, Rodimus is trying to convince Swerve, who's talking with Orr, trying not to freak out Orr, because if Orr freaks out, then the quantum engines could either explode, or they could jump them somewhere, who knows. So Rodimus is trying to convince Swerve to finally make him freak out. He's like, say something that will put him in a panic. And Swerve, still feeling guilty about taking the shot and it ultimately hurting Rung, he decides, no, I'm not going to do it. I wanted to say no that time because I know I'm not a good shot, but I was afraid if I wouldn't, then Rodimus would take my bar away. So, he was like, you know what, I'm not going to do this. And, he told Rodimus no, and of course Rodimus is down on the planet, and like, this was super important this time, and You know, he was like, he said what? Like, he was just super pissed off, and you could see it. Then we kind of go to this sort of somewhat flashback. It's at the very end of the story, because eventually the Titan was able to get enough juice to use his own kind of space bridge transwarp thing, and he was able to leave that, you know, the planet the Circle of Light was on, which was Crystal City, or underneath Crystal City, I guess. And
Wait, Crystal City? G1 cartoon reference.
yeah, oh yeah. And from there, I believe it was Crystal City. I could be wrong. Like I said, I'm just kind of thumbing through this because we have been going for a while. Then from there, in the process, he's able to remove ore from the quantum engines and kind of, you know, spins them up, all while teleporting the crew that was on the planet back to the ship and letting the ship kind of teleport as well. So they were able to kind of get out of that little scenario. But someone's asking the captain of the Benign Intervention, you know, well, you know, did you ask Ultra Magnus to join us? And he said, you know, no, but, you know, they were talking about it, and he said, well, what did he say? And then that's whenever the captain said he didn't say anything. He just smiled. So, yeah, pretty interesting stuff there. And then that's whenever the whole Shadow Play story arc happened. Which, you know, we just got through. So we went a little backwards on it, but it's totally fine, man. You know, it's all good. But from there, that's whenever we get to the next story arc, and you see a lot of things happening from Last Stand of the Wreckers. Like, you see, you know...
Hey, Dakota.
What's
Dakota.
up?
Hey, not to, you know, like, not to hijack the show, but do you think maybe we should wrap it up and maybe save the next story arcs for another episode? Just because we have gone almost 2.5 hours, and you know, like any bad comic book writer, we can always stretch a 4-issue story arc into a 6-issue story arc.
Yes, we can. What is it? There's only, 2 more after this?
Let's see.
Before Dark Cybertron?
So let's see. 14 is the next story arc. We're actually gonna skip. We skip. There's one issue that we almost skipped on account of trying to get to the next story arc, because 13 is the one right after Shadow Play, and then 22. So that's like 9 issues.
Yeah. So we're
and
basically halfway through.
Plus we have two spotlights with Trailbreaker and Hoist. So I mean, that's a pretty decent chunk for another episode. 11 issues.
Yeah. So we're basically halfway through, which is cool, man. Yeah, we can definitely do that. Something we had talked about real quick though.
And hey,
and I guess
if we stretch out the recap episodes long enough, then we can probably coincide with what I'm assuming you're going to bring up right now.
Yeah, we could. So we found out a bit of news today, which for the listeners and the watchers, that's going to be, it's going to be a week behind. But we found out that Till All Are One, which is something that we haven't covered. We probably won't cover for a couple of weeks. Is getting canned. It's getting canceled. Which I'm kind of bummed about that. I really liked Till All Are One. I didn't read the article, but a buddy of mine did and said it sounded like the writer didn't really want to play ball. Not necessarily play ball, but there were some strings being pulled, and you know, with anyone that wants their full creative freedom, you know, they're not gonna like that.
Really?
But you know, what do you guys kind of think about that?
I thought. Well, I'll let Spyros go. I'll let him go.
I don't know. I mean, like, I haven't really kept up with Till All Are One, but I do know the gist of it because I've been kind of keeping a loose eye on it. I know it's, and to give the listeners who, either are currently with the IDW universe or they're just kind of getting into it via listening to us, there's 3 ongoing titles right now in the IDW universe. There's Lost Light, which is effectively season 3 of More Than Meets the Eye storyline. There's Transformers Optimus Prime, which is dealing with the Transformers contingent currently on Earth, and Till All Are One is focused primarily on the events that are transpiring on Cybertron at the current moment. So for me, it's kind of disheartening because I prefer the Cybertronian-based stories. I feel like the Earth-based stories split too much of the focus between the Transformers and the humans that are on Earth. And as any diehard G1 fan, I hate humans. No,
Wow.
no, I'm playing. I don't hate humans. That's just a commentary on the fandom. I have to get my barbs in where I can. But no, I mean I prefer the Cybertronian based story arc that Till All Are One is running with right now.
Wait, can we call it what it is? Can we call it what it is? Let's call it a Starscream story arc because it's been mainly focused more upon him more than anything else. Let's just call it like it is.
In my opinion, it took my favorite parts of the RID story and kind of kept running with that. Starscream stuff, the stuff that's happening on Cybertron. I'll be honest, man, like, I just picked up the Optimus Prime book because I'm too invested in the story now to put it down. It's not really...
Right.
Actually, that's an interesting book because I you know what? I kept thinking they were going to do Thundercracker's book. Yeah, I mean, to me, that would have been nice if they would have done Thundercracker. You know what book I like to see them do, and it's a character they should touch upon, and he's with the G.I. Joe team right now, Skywarp.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just about to say that's jumping a little bit ahead in the current IDW universe. Skywarp is not in a Transformers book. He's actually in the G.I. Joe book, which is an interesting turn of events, so to speak.
It's shocking.
But, yeah, it is.
Well, I mean, that's like Cup is part of the Revolutionaries team, but again, not to get too far ahead, it is interesting with what they're doing. I'm not as thrilled come comic book day for Optimus Prime title as I am for Till All Are One or Lost Light.
Right.
It's just not doing it for me. And I think it's the Earth thing, the people, the humans. I'm that fan.
Actually, can I tell you why? I find the Optimus Prime to be very interesting because now you're giving him a focus, you're giving him a purpose, and you're tying in the RC and Sideswipe's relationship. You know what I'm saying? And therefore there's a thing going on between Optimus and Victorion, the torchbearers. Like there's some jealousy there. There's something that's going on there.
Well, I mean, I don't want to spoil it too bad because I mean we are going to talk about it eventually.
Oh yeah,
but
there is a new series that's coming on out that has not been mentioned called First Strike.
Oh yeah, I remember reading about that.
Yeah, I saw another event thing though, like Revolution was. That's what I gathered from it.
I think it's more.
It's more G.I. Joe tie into it.
Yeah, it's more an event than it is like another series for Transformers, because it's kind of bringing back that Hasbro shared comic universe.
Which is cool. Like it's cool that Revolution wasn't just a one-off, but
some people don't like it, and I don't understand why. I mean, been waiting and wanting this there for years, and now all of a sudden you don't like it. I don't understand it.
I'll be honest. I'm not gonna go. I'm not gonna pick up Rom, Mask, and Micronauts.
Right.
I mean, I picked up Joe because I've always been interested in GI Joe, but Rom is like 9-10 issues in right now, and I don't want to backtrack it. But Rom's the only other one that I think I would be interested in reading. Maybe Micronauts too, because of their origins. But like I could care two shits less about Mask. But the Talal one thing, it's really bumming me out, man, because you got Liege Maximo in that, and I was really expecting like that was where they were going to kind of keep like that. To me feels like what the real Titans Return story is, and should have been, because the Titans, they kind of focused on that aspect, and they even kind of focused on some tail end stuff of Combiner Wars that never, in my opinion, didn't really get wrapped up. But you had Carcer and all that, and then the Liege Maximo, who's Loki apparently.
Yeah, which he's one of the 13 primes, right?
Yeah, exactly. So it's we're getting all that, and I was honestly expecting to see like the whole Prime Wars thing, or Power of the Primes, whatever they're going to call it,
right?
Kind of come out of those books, and I was hoping for it, and I was hoping that they could keep it going. I thought it was pretty well received. I've always seen a lot of praise for it, but again, I think it's the whole the writer was she didn't want to answer to the man, so to speak, and that's understandable. But at the same time, I don't know. I'd play ball where I'd play ball, be able to write the stuff you want to write, for the fans.
Hey, Dakota, really quick, getting back to the annual, and I'm sorry because I stepped away, so if we're backtracking, I apologize. Cyclonus recapping the Guiding Hand story. Did we touch on that at all?
No, I just, I really did just skim through it and talk about the important parts of them landing on the planet and finding the Titan, the Galactic Council being there, and then that pretty much wrapped it up after that. Yeah.
Okay. Well. Yeah. So we'll touch on that next episode because it's something I want to kind of speak at length about, just because I like the new take on the in-universe mythos of how the ancient times were. Because in the cartoon, like Prime and everything, it's always been Primus and Unicron.
Mm-hmm.
But the Guiding Hand is a new spin on the quote-unquote religion of Transformers in this universe.
Yeah.
So I think that'll be a good jumping off point for next episode.
Okay. Cool.
So what anybody want to do any shout outs or tell us?
Yeah, I do.
Tell us where we can find you.
You can find me, Big Walt, aka Walter, up here at Facebook, and in the words of Fred G. Sanford, I'm a big dummy because I don't even know my own Twitter account. But on the other good positive side note, I'm here, like I said again, with one of the fellow collectors, Gerald Prophet. Say hello there, sir.
Hello.
With him. Hey. So he's one of the big guys that's up here in the community and sitting here right next to his son, Nicholas. So shout outs there to him and his family. So another awesome night of episode here too, fellas. So keep the ball rolling.
Cool. And something I forgot to shout out at the beginning of the show. We are all the Cool Table Network, where you find cool shows like Shattercast Uncut, Enter the Realm, Beers and Bulgers 40K, Plastic Fanatics, Stasis Log, Nerd Rage Radio, Toy Detox, 8 Weeks, Figga Bangin', and then I think there's the Realm of Collectors Hangout podcast. Nope. So if there's any I'm missing, I'm sorry, but I think I got all of them.
I think you covered them.
Yeah.
All right, and where can we find you at Dakota?
Oh man, I'm typically found everywhere at Primal Sabbath, like Opus Primal and Black Sabbath. That's where the name came from.
That is cool. I am Optimus Primal and Black Sabbath. Maybe I should name it Big Walt and Pac or Big Walt and Biggie. Damn, that'd be cool as hell. Big Walt, Biggie, Biggie.
It's always the plan. But Spiros, man, where can we find you at?
All right, you can find me in the Facebook groups, Spiros Gallos. I'm usually pissing people off with my highly opinionated rhetoric. I'd say I'd average about one block per week, just not even like going after people, but just like making statements, and then all of a sudden, like there's comments being referred to or responded to in threads I'm in, and I can't see half the comments, so it means somebody blocked me. Or I'm terrorizing lowballers when I'm trying to sell stuff, because I'll call them out on their lowballing scumbag tactics. And I also handle the Toy Detox Twitter account. And you can find us at _Toy Detox. To go off on too big of a tangent, but the staff at Toy Detox, we've been working pretty diligently on getting a website launched where you guys can reach out to us. And I will be doing a bit of blogging, I believe. So look for us.
Channeling your inner millennial, huh?
Yeah, I mean, I do have a journalism degree, so I might as well start using it, some 13 years after I graduated.
Yeah, no kidding.
Hey, I got a question. You're
Yeah.
in Toy Detox?
Yes, sir.
If you ever get time, would you want to join him in Toy Detox?
Yeah, that's fine.
I want to get my man Joe put up here into the fold, bring him in slowly. It's like you guys are bringing me along, so.
Yeah, I got tons of useless knowledge I can give out to people.
Yeah, so. And by the way, girls, I love that attitude. Love the way you piss them off.
I like also, you can find Spiros at truthboner.transformerstalk.net.
Oh my goodness!
Oh God! Now I need to.
Oh my goodness!
Now I need to go register that domain name before somebody.
Man. I was gonna and I guess I'm spoiling it for the next time Greg does get on, but I was gonna introduce him as Greg from Mercy, as Greg from Gregimus Prime Toy Hunter Productions Official LLC.
Oh wow!
But we'll save it. I mean, I've already ruined it, but we'll save it.
Yeah. So yep, that's where you can find us all at, and until next week when we get together to bring you guys further along into the IDW universe. From Dakota, Walter, and myself, have a great night.
See you later.
Hey, are we gonna shoot the breeze, or what's